Hi, everyone, and welcome to another session of Power in Your Words. Our guest today is Huma Hamid. I personally am very excited to have her here because I'm also in the product space, so I am very excited to learn new things. So, hello, Huma, and thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us.
Glad to be here and excited to be talking about all thing product and everything else.
Mhm. So, we'll get right into it. So your journey to product management wasn't that straightforward, right? You started off as a software developer, you gradually transitioned into business analysis, program management, and finally ended up in product management. So how did you carve that path to the point that you are today?
Yeah, I would admit that my journey seems very exploratory than, straight line that people expect. So, and it has its own, you know, um, moments of discovery, exploration, curiosity, or just, hitting a block that I wanted to get around. Um, so my journey really in tech, really, I would say, started after I moved to the US. I had some experience working in tech as a software test engineer, which was actually my first job. And when I came to the US, I really wanted to, just go deep into that area, only to find out that software test roles back in um, after 2010, there was a lot of shift happening in those roles. Companies were moving from manual test, skills to automation, and that really, um, I had to meet my fear of writing code, if that makes sense. Because right after graduation, I had a lot of fear of writing code, even though I did graduate with a tech, you know, degree. I never thought that I'm built for software development. So I always, but I was inspired by like why we should be solving this problem than how we should be solving that problem. So I think some of my career choices are based on that, like in business analysis and product management, that was heavily driven by like trying to answer the question why. But then there were situations like industry shifting, companies shifting, and roles shifting. Different careers gave me different sort of skills, and that's basically what I gathered along the way. It hasn't been real linear. I would also admit that there wasn't a lot of clarity. I only knew the next step as I started working towards those steps. I think a lot of us get stuck in I want my whole career journey to be outlined in front of me. I will go here and here and here. And I think that wasn't the case for me because I was trying to figure out, and every opportunity that came, I really looked at that opportunity. Is it going to get me closer to my vision of what I want to become? Is it going to help me learn new skills that I want to acquire right now? And is it going to give me opportunities to expand in the future? So it may not be the final, destination. It may be a stepping stone. So those are like key points. Like stay flexible, stay adaptable. If industry is changing, your company is changing, your team is changing, see how you stay relevant, in those with the skills that you have, and of course with the passion and interest that you have. And then as new opportunities arise, go deep into those opportunities and see what really excites you about those. And do not take every job as the final step in your career, because they are not. Careers are more like those jungle gyms right now. You find your way, but stick to your vision. The path may change as you navigate.
That's great advice, right? Because when you come out of college, you think that there's a straight path that you're going to follow, but it never really ends up being that. And I really resonated with what you said about having a fear of writing code, because I come from a tech background. And I had a real fear of writing code during my degree as well as after. So I totally understand that and relate to that. So you talked about, exploring roles and how you took opportunities as they came. But at the same time, you spent like 8 years at Cisco, right? So how have you managed to do that? And how have you done that while still growing and reinventing yourself as time passed?
Yeah, I think the beauty of working with, companies that as big as Cisco or any company that is, as big in scale, you're basically not working for one company in one role. It's basically a whole system of opportunities that if you're willing to explore, you can navigate. So I have been with Cisco more than 8 years, but during that time, my mindset has really been, what is the next problem that we need to solve as a business? And in that problem space, how am I relevant so I can help drive the outcomes that are needed to be achieved by, the organization. So that always created new opportunities. For example, when I initially joined as a software developer, and that's where um, as some of our projects started to shift, that gave me an opportunity to reflect and see if I wanted to, do I see myself growing as a software development, professional, expert in that area? And I found maybe not. Maybe what resonated most for me is why we are solving this problem. So I took my interest and my passion behind the why and then explored the opportunities, through my network, through showing initiative, through learning. And I pivoted into roles like business analysis and program management to expand. I was still contributing, but again, I could use my skills in a very different way, maybe to solve similar problems, but now with a different angle. And I think as I continued to add more and more to my skills toolkit, I became more and more effective in looking at the problems more deeply and looking at the solutions, from all the various different angles. And that really helped me stay, to basically stay relevant to the company, but also keep refreshing my toolkit. And that's something that I really need, to stay engaged and stay motivated. I get bored if the problem space isn't changing or the solution space isn't changing, or it's just the same thing. Repetition is definitely not something that I enjoy doing. Um, so just even in the same space, I would say for anyone who is feeling stuck or thinking like I'm here for such a long time, see how can you look at the same problem from a different perspective, and what are the skills that I can still use while also stretching myself, into new areas of skill development, and then help solve the problem. Because as you stay with one sort of company, you understand the culture, you understand how to get things done because you understand the structure, the dynamics of that organization. How do you navigate? Who do you need to influence to get what sort of results? That become your leverage. So at that point, the only new stuff that you need to learn is either a new technology or a new role or a new problem space. So I used all of that to my leverage, and that's why I stick around, keep reinventing myself, and really enjoyed the process.
So it does look like that your organization was pretty supportive of all of the changes that you were trying to make, right? And how you were working and how you were asking the right questions. So that's really helpful, right? But what advice do you have for people who maybe don't have that level of support or encouragement or space within their organizations or within the ecosystems that they exist in to reinvent themselves? Like, what other tools or platforms can they use to do that?
Okay. Yeah, I think that's what I'm presenting is of course it's a very idealistic picture of how you can navigate, but I do want to admit that it hasn't been obvious or easy or again laid out in front of me. There's a framework that I learned from one of my mentors, and we use that a lot in, in within Cisco, and also now I would say in my career, which is experience, education, and exposure. So basically, when you are trying to reinvent yourself, see what's the how education and learning can or acquisition of new knowledge can help and support that pivot or reinvention. So it always almost always started with me trying to figure out like this is I'm interested in doing. Um, how do I go from being a software development engineer to a product manager? Like, what is that skill gap looks like for me? So for me, it started always with education, learning the vocabulary, learning the terms, learning, the what that new role is about, what are the things that I need to know to be successful. Now, that is only the initiative that you personally can do. Once you start building that vocabulary, then you start looking out in your network and see who are the people who may be interested in mentoring you, or giving you kind of exposure to problems that you want to basically solve so you can actually build the experience, not just the knowledge of the craft, but now the experience, of the craft. So mentoring plays a huge role. Stretch assignments played a huge role. So at there, almost every time I was taking on additional work just to stretch myself, to get exposure to, to the new roles in new areas of business. From there, I think once you start getting into this mentoring, it also starts to reveal who can be your sponsor. And finding the sponsorship, I would say, is the hardest part because that really depends on where you are. You may have sponsored directly in your organization or outside of your organization. So through your education, through your experience, you may be able to identify people who are willing to invest in you. And that's when the final step happens of unlocking an opportunity for you to go and do that thing. So I would say it's not a again, it's not a one-step process. You need to take initiative. You need to leverage your network. You need to sometimes do more work through stretch assignments and side projects. And then when you feel confident, then the sponsorship steps in and navigates you to the next level. It has taken me both time multiple years to get to that. I know when people look at my profile, it seems like, oh, from here to here to here, but in the background, it was at least 1 to 2 years of when I realized that I needed a pivot, when I actually started working on, building those skills, looking for mentors, looking for sponsors, and eventually it happened. One thing that I learned pretty late, I would say like my first couple of pivots were not very, like I was still figuring out, I didn't have a framework at that time. I would say coaches, they can play such a significant role in not just help you get clarity, help you navigate with, with all the mindset shift that you need, and also help you um, become more resilient as you're going through the process and people are rejecting you, they're not seeing the value in you. So I would say if anyone is looking for that sort of thing, if you don't have the network inside your organizations, definitely look for coaching, because coaches, especially specialized coaches, I think they play a huge role. So there's so many communities out there, you can always reach out and see who is willing to give you more tangible feedback steps. And then even in some companies, there are formal coaching programs. I would highly recommend leveraging into all of those areas to ease your transition as you're navigating this.
That's great insight into all of the work and the effort that goes into actually jumping from one role to another, right? Even when it's linear, but especially so when you're sort of shifting your domain each time. So That's great advice, and I'm a huge proponent of mentoring and coaching myself. So it's definitely helpful, especially when you don't have clarity of thought. I think it's key to have somebody who has more experience, especially in the field that you're aiming for, to sort of help you shape your ideas and develop an action plan. So definitely great advice. Let's focus a little bit on the work that you're doing today. So you are working on AI-led digital transformations. AI is just everywhere now, right? But talk to us a little bit about what AI is in the context of product management. What do you see for this in the next, say, 5 years? And what kind of skills do product managers need in the context of AI in the coming years?
That's a very broad question, and I think there is a lot of excellent advice from a lot of product experts and AI experts out there. And I think as a product community, we are still trying to figure out our role. So I may not be, I don't want to claim somebody who knows all the answers, but my understanding from looking at, what the community is talking about and how it's applicable in my role as a product manager, I think there are two layers to where this is going. So the first layer, I think everybody's talking about, there's a lot of noise on LinkedIn about that. Learn AI skills to become more efficient in your day job or the role that you're already. So leveraging tools, leveraging techniques, leveraging prompts, and leveraging basically your AI to support your work as a product manager. And I think um, like tools like Chat PRD, tools to prototype, tools to experiment, tools to um, write your product requirement, and coming up with the strategy, doing research, all of those areas. I think that's where product managers have a lot of leverage, that they can now rely on these tools. And I have been using a lot of them, to support my work. There's a slight difference I would like to call out, that when we look at LinkedIn, we assume that everybody can just go on these tools and start using and start creating. So I think that's where working in a big enterprise company, there are ethical and data privacy and safe use of AI. Those are primary concerns. So um, we do have a limited set of tools that we can leverage. But the point is that there's so much that you can do to accelerate and increase the efficiency as you basically navigate the PM space. And I think in one of the recent talks about product management could be the bottleneck. Like instead of one product manager supporting four engineers, it could actually get reversed, because how quickly the software development tools and AI, they are accelerating how quickly solutions can be built. So I think there's definitely that, and we haven't started seeing a huge shift all across the industry, but there is, as we are seeing more and more product roles, they are highlighting, using these tools, like how you can leverage to become a better PM. Now, the other layer of being a PM, which is actually building products that are like that has AI in them. Now, that's where I think there's a little bit of debate. Seems like everybody, and that debate has been ongoing for a very long time, like how technical a PM should be to be able to support the work that they do. And I don't think that debate has really ended with AI. It has actually become more interesting. So if you're working as an AI PM on a platform, maybe your skill set is more close to being technical, understanding, the underlying technology and how it works. But as you continue to, be in that space where you are not just somebody um, driving or leading the technical solution, there's also a lot of need for understanding um, still how this is going to solve the problems, for the business and for the user. So that need hasn't gone away. That need is still there. So your role as a PM is really, again, looking at the user problems and looking at the technology and still bringing that together and say, this is where AI is going to solve this user problem, and this is how it's going to help us, with growing the business or making us more efficient or making us, um, more relevant in the industry. So I think that's where a lot of us are falling. What happens in the next 5 years? I think there are a lot of experts that are predicting that AI will continue to change the behavior, how people are using products and what kind of products we will be building and how PMs will evolve. Um, there's also a vibe around, vibe coding. Maybe product managers are expected to now create prototypes. And I think those sort of expectations already existed with, can you build, wireframes, and can you, do you know SQL queries to fetch data to do analysis? So it really depends on the company and with, where PMs fall on the spectrum. I don't think there is one size fit all. That's my understanding, but we will see as the roles evolve. There's definitely an evolution coming, and I think that's the only permanent thing in tech industry, that there's always going to be, changing dynamics. So what we can do is to understand and just stay focused, stay relevant, stay sharp, use your adaptability, use your curiosity, use your human empathy. As a PM, you're still solving problems for humans. So all of those things will still remain relevant, regardless of where technology goes and how the roles are shifting.
Yeah, I agree. But I do want to get your input or your take on all this fuss around product managers eventually losing their jobs because AI is going to take over most of what they do, and stuff like that that you generally hear, especially in the technical circles. So, what is your take on that, or where do you think we're headed in those terms?
Again, I will go back to some of my lived experiences, like losing the job. If you are sticking to the same old skills, and that's your only game plan, then yes, as the roles evolve, you will become irrelevant. It's really not AI who is going to be taking your job. I think it's or ours, that for that matter. It's our lack of relevancy to the changing dynamics that will eventually lead to uh, job loss. But roles are also changing. Like, when, coming from my example, when the roles around software test changed, there were a whole layer that was removed. But then um, a lot of software test engineers found relevance into, other roles. Some of them moved towards becoming, because they had more technical depth, they moved into, software development space because they were not afraid of it or they enjoyed that space. So there was a pivot that happened there. And the other half was more interested in, why are we solving these problems? They knew the problem space, but now the focus of looking at the problem got shifted. They moved from, a lot of them moved into product roles. So the sticking to a particular job role will not work, but sticking to problems and how do you solve them now with new techniques and new angles, that will shift. And I think whoever is ready to adopt that will stick around, and whoever is not, willing to change and holding on to one particular job title or role, those are the people that I do see they will struggle. And we have seen that many times. AI is no different. I think the only thing is that we are seeing all of those shift as a very fast. They're happening very quickly in the industry. So my advice would be, look at who you are, what sort of problems really drive you, what sort of problems space, and how do you see yourself solving them? Can you solve an existing problem with the skill set that you have today, or you will need a new skill set to solve, that? And I think that analysis of your skill gap could help you really find relevance and reinvent yourself. But I'll be I'll be saying, like, it's very unlikely that we are not looking at a huge shift. It's coming, everybody's talking about it, but it's going to be your relevancy that matters the most. And I think that's where the most work is needed.
That's a pretty fresh perspective, right? That roles have changed since forever. It's just that it's happening at a fast pace, and so we need to keep up and we need to stay relevant while also still sticking to the core of product management, which is solving problems. Okay, so shifting gears a little bit. So we've talked about your work as product manager, but you also do a lot of volunteering. So you work with Pakistani women in computing and you also work with Global Women Asia. So talk to us a little bit about the work that you do with them. What is your mission behind it? And has that impacted how you are as a leader, as a person? So
Yeah, a lot of this actually was during the time when I was looking for that pivot for myself. Um, in the early days of my career, and now as I work with, a lot of other women in tech and just talent in tech at this point, I would say early careers are the most forming and the most confusing, you know, years of your career journey because you're just out of school, you may have landed your dream job at a dream company, or you may have struggled to find, where you wanted to work and then ended up in roles or in organizations that were probably your second or third choice. And you may have a little bit of discomfort. And then even if you're settled in your first job, there's still constant question like, how do I grow from here? How do I, evolve from here? Where do I go next? What do I do next? So there are different stages, like the early, entry level stage, the beginner level stage, and then as you transition into more intermediate, then of course there are other questions that start coming up. Career growth and progression becomes more and more important. But career has always been, a thing that I've been super invested in. So every time I needed more than what I knew, I resorted to communities, because communities are spaces that not only give you answers to how do I do this or how do I achieve this, but they are also people with lived experiences in those communities who can actually become your role models, become your mentors, become your sponsors. And that human factor has always played a huge role in how I navigated mine. Um, so I started, my journey with a lot of exploration of those communities, and eventually finding that each level basically give you, like, each experience and each journey, it makes us unique, but it's also, a lot of us go through that regardless of the your background. So that led to not just finding that support for myself, but also creating that support network for those who were like me. That led to the formation of PWIC. That led to the, joining Global Women Asia. Currently, I'm also serving on the board for Women of Cisco Americas as a co-chair. And there are plenty of other communities. So it's always about receiving the support that I needed and then giving back the support that I could provide to those who were still early. How that has shaped, it has given me the power of, when I needed guidance, when I needed role models, when I needed mentors. So it not just through theory, but also through practice. Like just talking to somebody helped. Finding the right connection at the right time helped. And just looking at how far you can go, in terms of role models, that also helped. But it has also made me a better product manager because my exposure with all of these different, people with different backgrounds, trying with so many, aspirations to grow. I learn a lot from them. And then it's much easier for me to look at a product and see, is it going to serve the need of this wider audience? Let's say if we take the same product and use it in a different demographics, is it going to, you know, solve problems in the same way, or is it going to be different? Like, do we need to introduce anything different? So I think in building products and building communities, and then also, being around talent. So I get to meet with so many talented product managers like yourself, designers, engineers, and just, people from different backgrounds. It all allows me to get to know more people. And of course, from them, from that sort of exposure that I talked about, I learn, and that always reflect in the way I build either products or teams or communities. So I think that has made me more intentional, if that makes sense, when I'm building something.
That's really nice. And as somebody who has benefited from these networks and communities when I myself was transitioning from one role to another. And as someone who's trying to do that for other people as well, I think that it's great work that you're doing with these communities, setting them up. And I know that it's not easy to take out the time for these things, right? But it's great that you're doing that and you're building these communities for other people, just a way to give back and also, of course, keep learning as well. So that brings us to the end of the session. This was extremely insightful for me. I had a great time speaking with you. I want to thank you again for taking the time. And yeah, I hope to speak to you soon.
Thank you so much, Aleena, and I really appreciate the conversation. And I hope that your audience, or your community, find some nuggets of inspiration, especially in the times where we are all trying to figure out our relevance, in AI. I would still say, let's remember who we are. We are problem solvers. We are leaders. We know how to navigate uncertainty, ambiguity, and things that we do not know. And let's bring our power, to not just navigate, but also create our careers. That's how we will, ride the wave of this uncertainty with AI.
That's great advice for whoever is going to be watching this. I'm sure they will learn a lot.